Welcome you to our panel discussion on ganja, marijuana, sensimilla, hemp, cannabis. Is it really Jamaica's green gold? I should tell you, and I see my beloved friend and colleague, Professor Morrison, across the room. I must tell you that my first and early recollection of ganja is being about 9 years old and my brother being found with a spliff. And my parents were so aggravated and agitated that my brother could be turning rasta and smoking this spliff that they shipped him off to the United States. It was not a very pleasant recollection, I must say. And then the other recollection I have is of a woman drinking some strong ganja tea and screaming and shouting and speaking very loudly, and I thought this ganja thing is just not on. But today I spent the morning looking at ganja, and I thought to myself, but this thing can make money. Ganja and other medicinal plants have the ability to generate revenues for Jamaica. Let me give you the numbers. I like the numbers. The worldwide market for ganja products is up to 140 to 150 billion US dollars. But if you look at natural products, well, those numbers just baffle my mind. $0.5 trillion is what Henry Lowe told us this morning. And so, for the first time at last, I'm sure that there's some of you in the audience that are saying to yourself, but this ganja thing not so bad enough. Perhaps it's something that we should look at. And so, if you were someone who is 80 years old in Jamaica, I suppose you'd be asked yourself, should we really be making ganja products? Making products from ganja? Does it have harmful effects on human health? Do people lose their mind? Do they go crazy when they drink some ganja tea or have ganja products? Or does it have medicinal benefits? Because today we heard that it can help you with nausea after chemotherapy. You know, I have a friend, she's a boy, I had a chickpea for just one day. The guy just soaked my ganja in some rum, and when I drink it, it's gone forever. So listen, man, I have to try this chickpea thing. And for the foreigners, chickpea is a virus that when you get it, you pray to die because it's so many pains and so much. No, I'm serious. It's pains and high fever, and arthritis has a new meaning. When she had it, she said, me, Bevan, this ganja thing works. The second question I think that we would ask, if we are going to go into this ganja business, can we produce enough of it? And what are the standards we would need to meet to grow and use it for medicinal purposes? Should we register ganja growers? Whether they're growing it using greenhouses or they're growing it in the soil? Should we be doing that sort of thing? Or should we just synthesize it in the lab, or just make it in the lab, as Henry Lowe says we can do? And if we are to maintain our competitive and comparative advantage, shouldn't we be preserving the good stuff? Hawthorn told us what today, so we have the good stuff. I remember being on my farm and somebody says they were growing ganja on my farm, and I said, no God, not today. But today I said to them, come let me grow a little ganja. You understand? Because they said we have the best stuff, as usual. But should we be, yes man, this thing is real, I'm telling you the truth, I'm just keeping it real. Should we be preserving the original germ plastic? That's a big word for making certain that the real stuff still remains. Or should we be developing new products so we can maintain our competitive advantage? We're ahead of the competition. There are the issues. One of our colleagues, one of our panelists will look at the economics of ganja. But if we're going to do this thing properly, we need to have an economic framework. We need to look at what incentives are we going to put in place, how we're going to help SMEs. We'll have to look at how do we find financing for it. Do we use the regular DBJ funding to finance it? But I hear this thing is business, big business. It's not small money. So how will we finance it? How will we move from research and development to products? How are we going to get that innovation into something that is bankable and which people want to finance? And so these are the questions that we will be looking at in this discussion this afternoon. We'll have Dr. Winston Delahaye, who will look at the medicinal and health implications. He's a psychiatrist. I'll tell you a little bit more about him. So you can tell whether when you smoke, when you drink the good ganja tea, whether you do better or not. And Mr. Hawthorn Watson will look at the scientific implications. He's the one who's going to tell us how we're going to preserve the good stuff. And Mr. Paul Burke, when he joins us, will tell us about the farming implications. Mr. Tony Verzura, I hope I pronounced it right, Tony, will look at the economic implications. And the Reverend Harriet will talk about the biblical and moral implications. Lick them, lick them, Lord, you know, that kind of thing. But you know, if you're religious, it says the herbs, the good herbs, are for the healing of the nations. And I feel a prayer up there, Reverend Harriet. But he's going to look at the moral and biblical issues. I said to my friend, but why would he care if we can make money? What is wrong with we're not smoking the good weed, Dr. Zahid. We are drinking it. We are making ointments for arthritis. Finally, I can get over my chickpea symptoms. You understand? So why would he care? How could there possibly be some biblical and moral issues related to it? But he'll tell us, he'll explain it to us. And Dr. William Courtney, who was scheduled to speak, will be replaced by Mr. Courtney Betty from Timeless Herbal Care, that will tell us about the medicinal tourism implications. How can we get tourists in? When I looked at Sanjay Gupta on CNN, and I looked at the various persons that were being having some kind of palliative relief from their epilepsy or serious pain, probably we could get people to come in Mr. Betty, to somewhere in Utrecht or up in Magati or near to a compound where they have the cool breeze and everything is fine and we won't smoke it, we'll just drink it. We'll have a pill, we'll eat it. But these are not the issues. It's what we will discuss in this panel discussion. We want you, after they have given the opening, each person will spend 5-10 minutes. We want to have the vibrancy. We want to hear from you and you tell us whether you agree with them and whether you have other perspectives that we can look at. Well, let me tell you a little bit about our panelists. And the first one that will be speaking is Dr. Winston Delahaye. Dr. Winston Delahaye is a lecturer in psychiatry at the University of the West Indies, Mona, Jamaica. He's a consultant psychiatrist and a clinical director of the Addiction Treatment Services Unit at the University Hospital of the West Indies. He completed his MD at the University of Pest, Hungary, his postgraduate degree in psychiatry at the University of the West Indies, his master's in public health, specializing in substance abuse and mental health at the Johns Hopkins University, and a Fulbright Hubert Humphrey Fellowship in substance abuse education, prevention, and treatment at the Johns Hopkins University. I find this particularly interesting that he's the chairman of the Bellevue Hospital. So if you think we're all going to go loony, he'll be able to talk to you about it. You understand me? And treat you, but I don't think that's what he plans to say. He's the deputy chairman of the Jamaica National Council on Drug Abuse, chairman of the National Homeless Committee, amongst other things, and past president of the Jamaica Psychiatric Association. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Dr. Winston Delahaye.
Thank you very much. Good evening, friends all. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I didn't know too much about the format and so on, but because I do these lectures every day at the university, it wasn't difficult to get something together for you. But a very important matter that we're discussing here today, as a psychiatrist, I'm affiliated with all aspects of cannabis. As an addiction psychiatrist, as a specialty, I certainly see the other end of things where persons who are not so lucky as others are succumb to the ill effects of cannabis. And in the same breath, as the clinical director of Medicandra Limited and the chairman of that clinical committee, I'm involved currently at a very advanced stage with clinical trials using cannabis for treating a wide range of illnesses. And so certainly recognize the positives in terms of cannabis use for medicinal purposes and support that. And in the same breath, given my specialty, I recognize the negatives and treat the patients, including a while ago, which is why I was almost a youngster of age 16 with cannabis-induced psychosis. So I certainly am exposed to both ends and happy to share with you that aspect. I've been asked to comment on the effects of cannabis. Some of you may or may not know, persons who are pro-cannabis are more likely to be associated with what for them are positive effects, which is necessarily a good balance. And so I certainly will speak to all aspects very briefly this evening. And there's been a lot of debate around the whole issue of decriminalization, which I'm also actively involved in, recognizing the challenges that we face as a country in terms of the management of any substance-related disorder. In fact, I'll share with you the most recent National School Drug Survey of November last year, where, and this is really alarming. So I've been with the National Council on Drug Abuse for the past 10 to 12 years, and I've seen the amount of work they've been doing in the last 5 years. This has doubled, tripled in terms of their efforts and the number of man-hours, for lack of a better word, that they've put in educating youngsters in particular about drug use. In spite of that, in the last November survey, 60 to 70% of youngsters reported not having heard a single word about a prevention message. That clearly tells you that the funding available for these messages is just not where it should be, and the National Council on Drug Abuse, in spite of its efforts, needs more resources to do more to reach persons who may not be as lucky as others are. And so I'm very happy, and I tell patients who come to me, if you see positives in what you do, that's fine with me, very happy. And in the same breath, if you're experiencing negatives, I'm able to identify them and help you along. So my talk isn't necessarily for or against it as it comes, as the need arises. And I'm sure Professor Lowe spoke to this slide in terms of the number of areas that internationally we're now seeing ganja being used. That includes as an analgesic, as an anti-inflammatory drug, antispasmodic, and so on. Large range. I'm pretty sure you covered it this morning, probably use the exact slide I'm looking at because we work together. The point is, at Medicandra Limited, we've determined that we'll start our clinical trials with pain-related disorders, chronic malignant pain, post-operative pain, acute pain, pain in the gynecological area, and so on. Large area with the potential to help persons. That's why we're physicians, because we want to help people, and the potential to help Jamaicans do better with the illnesses that they have. In terms of the socioeconomic development, potential development, which others are here are far more versed in, but I'll just share with you that globally, currently it's a $2.5 billion US business. That's a medicinal cannabis component that I'm discussing. And it's expected to be doubled in the next 3 years. And so many developing countries like ours, with economic challenges like ours, could use the industry to help grow their economies. But is it all positive? And that's a resounding no. And I'll just now real quickly share with you the negative effects. And so the main psychoactive ingredient, meaning the ingredient leading to the potential problems with cannabis that I treat every day, is delta-9 trans-THC. I hasten to say, though we support medicinal cannabis and we recognize that delta-9 trans-THC is the main psychoactive ingredient, we also recognize that where you separate the products and use only the cannabidiols for treatment, they don't work as effectively as when you have all components present in the products that you're using. We appreciate and recognize that, and so the attempt is to reduce the delta-9 THC component to a tolerable level in products. Obviously, in our clinical trials, we therefore need to exclude persons with schizophrenia because we recognize that they will be worse potentially if they are exposed to any amount of THC. So these are all the challenges that we have. In spite of that, the potential gain is far more than the loss, and so we proceed and press along. But to look at the potential negatives, I'll start with addiction to cannabis. Very well established that 9% of adults using cannabis may develop an addiction to cannabis. The number increases significantly for adolescents. So for children, it's 50% of those, and hence the focus of the National Council on Drug Abuse in preventing any drug use. And in this case, we're discussing cannabis in adolescents because that's 1 in 2. And if you have 2 children, it's likely one of them, if they both use, who may succumb to some of the negative effects. So that's what we call the drug use disorder, the cannabis use disorder, meaning the addiction. The DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Diseases, which we use as our Bible, for lack of a better word, for the illnesses that we treat, we recognize specific illnesses associated with cannabis. The DSM-5 came about in March of 2013, and the illnesses they recognize include, I'll just list them quickly for you, cannabis intoxication, cannabis withdrawal, well recognized, well established. I've had a couple of patients with that. It's not the most common illness we see, but it is present. Cannabis intoxication delirium. Usually in my presentations I have this one highlighted in red because given my specialty, I see these patients every day. Cannabis-induced psychotic disorder, so people do get mad from smoking weed, and cannabis can make you mad. We need to be very clear about that in persons with an underlying vulnerability and susceptibility. And so just real quickly, because this is so important, because we're unsure of the genes coding for psychiatric illnesses, we cannot today, through genetic mapping, determine that you are at risk because I found the gene in your system, and so you might not want to use. We're not sure, and so you're taking a chance. We're sure though that if you are mentally fit today, but your cousin is schizophrenic, your mother is schizophrenic, your aunt is schizophrenic, it is highly probable that you have the gene for psychosis, and you probably will succumb to using. That's one. 2, if today you're in UTEC or University of West Indies, and whatever discipline you're in, you think you want to finish with a good enough grade, because we are clear on the impact of cannabis on memory and learning, we can categorically state that you might not want to use cannabis. But just to list then some of the effects, and I'll close with my most recent research with my team on cannabis and memory, which the findings of which was very alarming. The findings were alarming to us. But the common physiological effects, I'll just lift out a few: decreased libido, constipation, mild bronchoconstriction followed by bronchodilation, ataxia, and that is an abnormal gait. In fact, I used to be in the Army. I was a military officer. As a medical officer, you could easily detect who was using cannabis because of the gait associated. And so military officers usually walk upright and so on. So the persons, you kind of lean a little bit and so on. You can rest assured. If there's no neurological condition, then they would test positive, which is one of the things not allowed in the Army. So that's what my job at the time. But just to lift a few more, restlessness, depersonalization. These are the psychotic features now. And these are features which users of recreational cannabis enjoy, but to others it's an illness. So depersonalization is where another term would be an out-of-body experience, where you're almost seeing yourself move around, but you're not in yourself, if you follow what I'm saying. Derealization, you feel unreal, you don't feel you're a part of the world, panic reactions, paranoid ideation, and of course the main and most negative of the illness is the cannabis-induced psychotic disorder, which unfortunately for some presents as an acute psychotic state, a brief psychotic episode. You treat, they discontinue their use, and they may recover and be well. But some, and we don't know because we're not clinicians, have to wait a long time. Even with an after treatment, still psychotic. That's an unfortunate thing, and you never know before if that will be used, so you're taking a chance. I'll close now with cannabis and its impact on neurocognitive performance. That's my most recent research we will publish shortly. We looked at the impact of cannabis on neurocognitive performance of Jamaican adolescents. We had a sample of youngsters in Jamaican schools who smoke weed, at least 3 spliffs per week. We had a sample of youngsters who were not weed users, and we confirmed that using testing and so on. And we looked at their performance in various ways, and so learning can be broken down into a number of areas, not to get into the intricacies of that. But the most important is that our findings show that in all aspects that we looked at, that was what was alarming. So we know there is impact. If we looked at 10 things we expected, maybe 6 or 7 would be impacted. All 10 were impacted negatively in terms of learning by cannabis. So that's food for thought for our country. Our own children are not doing very well in things like mathematics, English, known throughout the Caribbean and in Jamaica. And so with those kinds of challenges, and given the monetary resources or lack thereof, we really need to stand back a little and though recognize the potential gain from the medicinal cannabis, not move too much ahead of ourselves, but keep it real and ensure that should there be any changes that we have the funds available to step up the prevention messages. At this time, I'm not so sure those funds are available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Winston Delahey. It's really interesting because all morning I heard about how good ganja is and how it helps learning, but only that. Well, should we drink it? No, should we drink it or should we eat it? Should we rub it on our knees? That we can ask him in a little while. But he did say that the main psychoactive element that affects you negatively, am I correct, is delta-9 THC. And the rest of us don't know what that means. I'm correct, right? But I must tell you that a man is coming immediately after Dr. Winston Delahey that will tell us about delta and everything else. Am I correct? He's going to look at the scientific implications of ganja, marijuana, sensimilla. You handling him? No, you won't. Cannabis. Is it really Jamaica's green gold? Because nothing in life comes with it being perfect. Am I correct? So, when Prof. Lowe told me today that CBDs, and he'll explain all of what that means, CBDs are more valuable than gold, than an ounce of gold. I thought, good Lord, you tell me there are problems, but for all that money, I'm sure that there are some people who are saying that. And he will look at the scientific implications of ganja. So we're going to ask Mr. Hawthorn Watson, who is the acting executive director of the Scientific Research Council. And I'm sure you're saying to yourself, what? The acting executive director of the Scientific Research Council believes in ganja. Yes, he does. He is one of the persons who isolated some critical compounds early in 1969. He lectured at the College of Arts, Science and Technology, now UTech, where among his several achievements, he founded the Chemical Technology Program. He was the first to establish and publish the structure of a unique compound found in minute quantities in a plant of worldwide forensic and medicinal interest. We know what that is. That's ganja, right? Hawthorn? That's ganja. Let us not deny the fact that ganja has tremendous medicinal practice. And I'm so excited to hear about this. That there's a whole long blurb about him and his experience at Central and his experience here and his work on science, technology, and innovation. But I'll spare you all of that. I said, Mr. Hawthorn Watson, please, we invite you to speak to us now about the scientific implications of ganja.
I will speak as soon as I can get over the part about ganja reduce the libido. It's true. But seriously, after hearing the lectures this morning, I said I was going to give it a try. But reduce the libido.
I agree with that.
colleagues, we scientists have yet to find a way to make science and technology sexy. So I won't be very long. In terms of the scientific implications of ganja, what we at SRC are really interested in, one, Jamaica is known to have a high-grade stuff, originally so. But over these past years, there have been a dilution of the breed by various strains, if not species, which have been brought into the island. We will be interested in preserving the original ganja, the original germplasm, as the moderator said. And one of the reasons why we are interested in preserving the original germplasm is that science is very funny. Today you vilify something and the next day you find out it's your savior. Because though we vilify THC, and I'm not making a case for THC, in a recent study, one out of Spain and one out of France, it has been shown that THC suppresses the growth of cancer cells in the liver and the brain. So we don't know whether 10 years down the road, THC will be a drug in demand. In any case, part of the mandate of the Scientific Research Council is to preserve the original plants, whether it be ganja, whether it be ackee, whether it be naseberry, or what have you. So that is one of the first things that we will do with ganja. Working, of course, with University of the West Indies. You heard from Wayne McLaughlin this morning of the wonderful work that they are doing in identifying the different strength ganja in Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth. The other aspect of the science that we are interested in, you heard mention that we isolated a new cannabinoid way back sometime. It was isolated and characterized so we know exactly what it is. But no further work has been done on it. Maybe because it's one of those components in ganja that is present in very minute quantities. I remember used to get the ganja from the police, and a 50 pound of compressed ganja might give you less than an ounce of the stuff that we isolated. And so we are going to go back there. We're going to look at whether or not it has any beneficial property, or if in fact it is harmful to mankind. Because sometimes we don't have the charts of the compound here. Sometimes there's a slight difference between one compound and another that makes a difference. Or if you even take, say, THC, there are two different THCs in the plant. One with a certain feature going this way, and one with the same feature going this way. The one which is going this way is the psychoactive one. The one which is going that way has been shown to have no psychoactive effect at all. So sometimes the features found in the compound can influence the property. And we believe that in the case of cannabis trial, which is the one that we isolated, there are features present that give us hope that we could have something good. So we want to go through with clinical trials with those who seem to have an effect first on mice, and if the results are positive, then we will move to human trials. That is going to take some time because it's a slow process, maybe a year, maybe two, and this can also be very costly, but we believe that is an avenue that should be pursued. Also at the same time, we isolated another true cannabinoid, C21H30O4. We know what the molecular structure is, but we don't know exactly how the thing is arranged. We know that the melting is a clean compound because the melting point is 107 to 108. So it is a very pure compound. What we need to do now is go in back and isolate the structure of that compound. And much the same as CBT, we want to look at clinical trials with mice and then man. So there are two aspects of study there. Simultaneously, while we're going back into the plant for these compounds, we are also going to look if there are other compounds there that might be new and not so far known. You know, it's interesting, when I started working on ganja, the purpose for the research was that at the time it was said that it is a female plant. I don't know why they say all that, but things about it. It's a female plant that gave you the high. True, let's face it, the female plant has more of the resin than the male. So we could distinguish physically what they are, but what the government of the day wanted was the chemical differentiation. Can you find the chemicals in there that differentiate the male from the female? But before, about 6 months into the research, the government of the day changed its mind and just said, ganja is ganja. If you found with ganja, male or female, you get locked up. Fortunately, by then, some very interesting compounds started to drop out of ganja. And we want to, I just say that to say that while we go back for CBT and this other compound, we'll be looking to see if any other new compound will drop out of ganja. If you listen to the various talks this morning, you will see that there's a strong case there for nutraceuticals and cosmeceuticals. Already there are several on the market, and I know my visiting friends from the north do have samples of various cannabinoid products. Henry Noah, as you know, launched 7 new products the other day, and Dr. Lambert, in addition to his 2 Asmasol and Kenasol, is launching 2 others. So it's a fledgling industry, but we feel that it has enormous potential, and so we will continue to look at developing those cosmeceuticals and those nutraceuticals. The other area that we at SRC would be concerned with is that we need to provide robust backup service in terms of analytical support. Because if we are going to establish an industry, we have to establish an industry that can meet international standards. We can't grow ganja and make money here in Jamaica. Yes, we can make 2 shillings, but we don't want to make 2 shillings. We want to make a couple pounds well. And the only way we're going to do that, we have to export. And if we are going to export, we have to make sure that it meets the standard that is required by the world market. Certainly, people are going to want to know whether or not the ganja they are importing has any insecticidal residue on it. They want to know if any soil residue on it. And one of the things that we would hope from SRC that we could do is to provide certificate of analysis. In that, if you bring your ganja and we test it, we should be able to say this particular sample of ganja has X% THC, Y% CBD. And so this is one area again in which we are hoping that we can provide service. And when the industry will have enlarged and gotten real big, we hope we can employ a lot of analysts and chemists in our labs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. Our next speaker is not unfamiliar to anybody in Jamaica. And I told you in my opening remarks that in the good old days, when I was a kid, which wasn't such a long time ago, I told you that my parents shipped off my brother because he was found with a spliff. And they said, Lord God is going to get into this Rastafarian ganja smoking thing. And Paul Burke is one of those visionaries, you know, who in the period that people did not find ganja useful and the thing to do, he believed in something else. And he said, when I think of Paul Burke, I think of the phrase, vision is the art of seeing the impossible. Because 20 years ago, you just couldn't think that one day a group of nice middle-class people would be sitting in the Pegasus or wherever talking about ganja. Paul started his campaign some time ago, asking the Jamaican people to rally around the idea of the decriminalization of ganja and the use of ganja for medicinal purposes. But I said before, if we're going to do this, if we're going to start a ganja-based industry, can we grow enough of it? Or do we need to synthesize it? And if we grow it, how will we grow it? What are the standards we must meet? How are we going to trace it from start to finish? How are we going to do life cycle analysis? Well, Paul Burke is going to explain that to us. He's going to tell us the farming implications of a viable, productive, and profitable ganja industry. Mr. Paul Burke.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. You know, today is a strange day. I've never put my key in the ignition and the car has not started until this evening. And that's why I'm late. For some inexplicable reason, it just would not start. It's not a battery problem, so I have to beg a lift down. But I apologize for that. And it won't take more than a minute. My entry point was really from a human rights perspective. Growing up in Rockport and just seeing the brutality being unleashed by members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force against young people, young Rastafarians, anybody in general, for having a split. And people seem to forget that up to 1972, it was an 18-month mandatory sentence for a split, a ganja seed, anything at all. There is no discretion of the court. So really from that point of time, we know it is a cruel, wicked, terrible law, putting young people primarily into